Hello, welcome once again to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis. And today we are continuing our Top 10 Favorites series here at Papa Nick's Music. Our topic for today is guitarists, and I've got a Top 10 plus 10 today. Ha 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 ha. Not sure what that means. It's not a Top 20, though. No, I've got two separate Top 10 lists. I've got my top 10 conventional choices and my top 10 dark horses. My conventional choices are the kinds of guitarists that I think you would see cropping up in lists like this. I don't think there's going to be much in the way of surprise. For example, he's not on my list, but I might say that one of my favorite guitarists is Earl Klugh. Well, Earl Klugh is a very well-known guitarist. He's a wonderful technician. He's the kind of guitarist that other guitarists love to listen to. So I don't think anybody's going to be surprised if I've got Earl Klugh on my list. My dark horses are going to be people like Preston Reed. There we go. I love Preston Reed. I love this album, by the way. Preston Reed and Lawrence Juber both, but I love, particularly fond of Preston Reed. I think more people have heard of Earl Klugh than have heard of Preston Reed. Right? So I've got two top 10 lists. My top 10 favorite conventional guitarists, and my top 10 favorite dark horses. Okay? One quick disclaimer before we get into this. I am not trying to suggest at any point that these two lists are comparable with one another. They don't correlate. My number 5 conventional guitarist and my number 5 dark horse guitarist are not necessarily on par with one another. Okay? Don't go there. It's just that I've got my top 10 that I think that you would expect I would have, and I've got my top 10 that I think you wouldn't expect. And so they relate to one another within the lists, but not across the lists. I'm going to go ahead and do them together, though, because I don't want to do all 10 of one and then all 10 of the other. I'm going to do them both at the same time. Just know they're not competing against one another as far as I'm concerned. Before we get into that, though, a couple of administrative items. Number one, this is a Top 10 Favorite series, so Papa Nick's Music's Top 10 Favorites, or Top 10 series as a whole, is unofficially sponsored by Schoefferhofer Beer. Oh, wheat beer and grapefruit soda together? That's good beer. Secondly, the criteria for being included in my top 10 favorites. In order for me to consider something to be one of my favorites, number one, it has to inspire me. I have to feel connected to it in some way. It is my favorite, right? But secondly, I have to like it well enough that I've actually bought a copy of it somewhere along the line. So I have to have some work by that artist in my library in order for me to truly think of it as my favorite. And then finally, the final administrative note, this is an evaluative exercise, so we have to be talking about the subjectivity notice. Here at Papa Nick's Music, we fervently, passionately believe in the principle that there's no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad art. There is only art that we like and art that we do not. And as long as we keep that in mind, this is a wonderful conversation. It's entertaining and it's enlightening. It only goes off the rails when somebody in the conversation insists on being objectively right, which, no, that does not exist. It doesn't happen that way. No, that's not the way this works. As long as we keep that in mind, this is a wonderful conversation. So I'm not trying to make any claims objectively about the qualities of these guitarists. These are my favorites. Okay? You may have different ideas. You may agree with some of my choices. You may think there are other choices that I could have made that would be better. Drop those comments down below. I always love hearing from you. Okay. With all of that administrative hoo-ha out of the way, and I think that may be the quickest I've ever done that, let's get into my top 10 plus 10. I've got my top 10 conventional favorites and my top 10 dark horses. I'm going to start with conventional favorite, move to dark horse each time, okay? So, my number 10 conventional favorite, Randy Bachman. Again, I don't. I'm not saying that this is widely considered to be one of the 10 best guitarists. I don't think anybody who's watched any of my videos is going to be surprised that I like that I like Randy Bachman. I love Randy Bachman. I love Bachman Turner Overdrive. I like Randy Bachman's solo work. But I've picked BTO2 as my example here because it has Welcome Home. If you want to know why I love Randy Bachman as a guitarist, listen to Welcome Home. If you've never listened to this song before, oh, listen to it. It's a good hard rock song, and then in the final, when he wraps it up, it turns into a very light, airy jazz number, and it's just, I love Welcome Home. It also has Let It Ride, which is one of my all-time favorite songs, so love Randy Bachman, love Bachman Turner Overdrive. Randy Bachman is my number 10 conventional guitarist. My number 10, as far as the dark horses, I've got so many different lists going on. My number 10, as far as the dark horses go, is a gentleman named Tim Meltreger. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tim, if you're watching this, let me know. Who is the guitarist for a Southern California band called the Friendly Indians. This is an album that they released in the early 91, I believe. It's called Pure Genius, which I think is a fantastic album. I love the Friendly Indians. I became aware of the Friendly Indians because I watched a television show on the USA Network in the 90s called Psych, about a detective who pretended to be a psychic to explain the fact that he just had a very highly developed attention to detail. And it was a wonderful series, very funny, good mysteries, right up my alley. And it was created and produced by Steve Franks, who was the frontman for Friendly Indians. The Friendly Indians performed the theme to the show. If you've ever seen the show, that bouncy little ditty that is the theme song, that's the Friendly Indians. I love Tim Meltreger's guitar work throughout this album. He's a fantastic guitarist, and he is my number 10 dark horse favorite guitarist. My number 9 conventional favorite guitarist, Lindsey Buckingham. I love Lindsey Buckingham. I don't know that I would get along with him. He strikes me, and I could be wrong about this, but he strikes me as being very pretentious. So I think I would hate to be stuck on an elevator with him. But oh man, if he was playing his guitar on that elevator, I would cherish every moment. I love listening to Lindsey Buckingham play his guitar. I've seen him in concert a few times, and he's just wonderful. I decided to go with his first solo album. I could just as easily have picked any of the Fleetwood Mac albums that he's on. He's always doing fantastic work. I really like the song Trouble, so I'm picking Law and Order as my example, but anything by Lindsey Buckingham is going to be fantastic, going to be spot on. My number 9 conventional favorite. My number 9 dark horse is a British guitarist, very popular in Britain. Was never very popular here in the United States. He had a minor hit in the late 70s with a song called Fool If You Think It's Over. I'm talking about a gentleman named Chris Rea. I love Chris Rea. He's a blues guitarist, which is unusual. I don't normally, I'm not a huge fan of the blues, but he is a wonderful guitarist. He normally plays slide guitar, and I love his stuff. I've got as my example here his album, The Road to Hell, which has The Road to Hell, obviously, You Must Be Evil, Daytona is Good, Tell Me There's a Heaven's a little on the overboardy side, but it has a song called Texas on it, which I think is just fantastic. Completely disagree with the content of the song, but I love the song. Nobody wants to go to Texas. But I love Chris Rea. Dark horse favorite or coming in at number 9 on my dark horse favorites, Chris Rea. Coming in at number 8 on my conventional guitarists, talking about guitarists that everybody knows, talking about guitarists that every guitar player will include on their top 10 list. Oh, we've got to be talking about Glenn Campbell. Are you kidding me? I've got this as my example for him, like as a solo artist, because truth be told, this is the only Glenn Campbell album I have. I think I've got a greatest hits collection on CD, but this is the only studio album of his that I've got. But what I really want to hold up as my example of why I love Glenn Campbell so much, the Monkees albums. These first few albums, the first couple of albums, when you're listening to those Mike Nesmith songs. Mike Nesmith was working with parts of the Wrecking Crew. He has Glenn Campbell playing for him. So in Mary Mary, that little bluesy lick that's at the beginning of Mary Mary, that's Glenn Campbell. Papa Gene's Blues, Pick It, Luther. Luther is Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell played on some of my favorite early Monkees tunes, so that's why I'm sticking him here on my top 10. My number 8 dark horse guitarist is Gabby Pahinui. I went on a kick probably, 11 years ago or so, 12 years ago maybe, where I listened to a lot of Hawaiian music. And I got hooked on Gabby Pahinui's slack key guitar playing. Oh my God, is he fun to listen to. I love Gabby Pahinui. Yeah, I'll say it each time. My wife and I regularly go to Disney World. As you can tell, I've got Disney stuff back there. I've got Disney stuff back there. We regularly go to Disney World. When we go, we stay at the Polynesian Resort. And one of the things I love about the Polynesian Resort is every once in a while they're playing Gabby Pahinui in there with the piped music on the grounds. I love Gabby. The album Gabby I love, but I also love the man. Gabby Pahinui, number 8 among my dark horses. Number 7 among my conventional favorites, George Benson. I like George Benson. I like the fact that not only is he a very good guitarist, he's also a very good singer. And because he tends to sing along while he's playing, he's doing both at the same time, which always impresses the hell out of me. I love George Benson. This album, it's one of those that if you were a cognizant music fan in the 1970s, you had to have a copy of Breezin' in your library. This and Weekend in LA. You had to have both of those. I've got both of them. I'm using Breezin' as my example. This is one of my favorite albums. I love George Benson. I love Breezin'. Oh, love it. My number 7 among the dark horses. Now, so far, I've got I've had 3 guitarists that I think many people who are watching this video have never heard of. You've never heard of Tim Meltreger because he's local to Southern California. If you're American, you probably don't know anything about Chris Rea because he never really had much of a career here. He's popular in the UK. Unless you're interested in Hawaiian music, you're not going to know Gabby Pahinui because there's no crossover there. It's not like he ever had a pop hit. This next one is a guy that I'm willing to bet you've heard of. It's just he doesn't normally crop up on lists like this. This is, of course, Joao Gilberto. I love Joao Gilberto. I can listen to The Girl from Ipanema all day long. I can listen to Desafinado. That was the other one I was trying to remember. Corcovado. The other one. Sitting here trying to remind myself what the names of these songs are. I love listening to this. Last week when I was talking about my keyboardists, I was talking about Tom Jobim, who wrote all of the music, or most of the music on there. I think he wrote all of the music on this. Yeah, I don't want to look it up. And I was talking about my love for Brazilian music in the first place, and that all started first time I listened to Gets Gilberto. So one of my favorite albums, and Joao Gilberto, one of my favorite guitarists. He's my number 7 dark horse. Okay, my number 6, as far as the conventional favorites go, this is one of these. When I was going through my drummers and when I was going through my bassists, I ran into problems because they were artists that I knew primarily from Steely Dan. And while I've got all the Steely Dan albums, I've got them on a big collection. I didn't want to hold the collection up, and I've got the same problem here. My number 6 guitarist is Larry Carlton. So rather than holding up a Steely Dan compilation, I'm holding up a Larry Carlton compilation. This is a greatest hits, the Larry Carlton collection. But I love Larry Carlton. I mean, ace. I am particularly fond of melodic guitar playing. I'm not as impressed by people who are demonstrating their dexterity. I want to be able to hum along with it. And that is Larry Carlton in a nutshell. My number 6 favorite guitarist in the conventional favorites, Larry Carlton. My number 6 favorite guitarist in the dark horses, I could have held up a variety of different Chris Isaak albums, but I decided to go with Narrabeen, which is one of Herschel Yadovitz's solo albums. I've also got a copy of High Time in my CD rack over there. Strongly recommend both of them. I really recommend Narrabeen, and not just because he was nice enough to sign it for me. That's what he looks like, by the way. I recommend Narrabeen. This is just wonderful music. Oh man, I love Herschel Yadovitz. I say it a lot, but I could listen to this all day long. I can listen to Herschel Yadovitz all day long. I think he's a fantastic guitar player. If I were going to hold up a Chris Isaak album, it would probably be Speak of the Devil, because I think that is a very underrated Chris Isaak album. But I want to encourage you to track down a copy of Narrabeen and give it a listen. Good stuff. Number 6, Dark Horse, Herschel Yadovitz. Number 5 among my conventional favorites is one of my favorite, 5th on my list of conventional favorite guitarists. I've seen postings on social media several times about listing your favorite guitar solos. Sorry, I'm trying not to sneeze. It's pollen season here in San Antonio. But I've seen listed several times. What are your favorite guitar solos? And there are a few guitar solos that stand out to me that are they are the reason why I like to play the guitar. They are the reason why I value the guitar as much as I do. They make me want to be able to play that well, even though there's no way in hell I will ever be able to play that well. And one of these 3 that I think of solos was played by the gentleman I have at number 5. The problem I have when it comes to holding up my example is that solo came on a Steely Dan album, because I'm talking about Jeff Skunk Baxter. I love Jeff Baxter's solo on Ricky Don't Lose That Number. It's one of my 3 favorite solos of all time. I love the skunk. But he's got some fantastic work on Minute by Minute as well, particularly How Do the Fools Survive, the closing track. If you've not listened to that song, if you've not listened to it recently, and if you tend to tune out as the song is starting to fade away, go back, listen to that solo that Jeff Skunk Baxter does at the end of How Do the Fools Survive. Oh my God, is it perfect? Oh, is it perfect? Jeff Skunk Baxter, number 5 on my conventional favorites. Number 5 on my dark horse. Okay, we're back to somebody that we flirted with people who are relatively known with Joao Gilberto and Herschel Yadovitz, but man, we are back to the dustbin of history with Dave Carpenter. Dave Carpenter was the lead guitarist for the initial lead guitarist for the Greg Kihn Band. He was the lead guitarist on this album, which had one of the 2 big hits for the Greg Kihn Band, the breakup song, They Don't Write 'Em Like That Anymore. It also has The Girl Most Likely was moderately successful, but the breakup song was the huge hit. solos on those two songs, that's Dave Carpenter. On the next album, which I've got hanging on the wall right up above the camera, Conspiracy, that's the one that has Jeopardy. And from that album on, Greg Douglas is the lead guitarist. So this was the last album that featured Dave Carpenter. I like Dave Carpenter much better than Greg Douglas. Greg Douglas was a flashier guitarist, much greater dexterity. I think Dave Carpenter played with a lot more soul. So, number 5, Dark Horse guitarist, Dave Carpenter. Strongly recommend Rock and Roll. Also strongly recommend Next of Kin. Very good album. Number 4 on my list of conventional guitarists, none other than Brian May. I've got his first solo album, Back to the Light, here. I could have any of the Queen albums. I pick a Queen album. It's going to have wonderful guitar work on it. I'm particularly fond of his work on jazz. Dead on Time. Oh my God, that's an amazing song. But I'm going to go ahead and use his first solo album as my example here. I love Brian May, and you know why I love Brian May. Every guitar player loves Brian May. Number 4. My number 4 among the dark horses is a guy, he's a jazz guitarist, and I just happened to see him play. He was making an appearance on a talk show or something. I don't remember what the TV program was, but he came out and he did a song, and I was just gobsmacked watching this guy. I ran out the next day because whatever he was doing, he was promoting his debut album. Ran out the next day and bought his album. I've got probably 6 of his albums. I will listen to him nonstop for a couple of months, and then I'll move on to other things, and then I'll come back and I'll listen again. And I am talking about Stanley Jordan. Oh my God, do I love Stanley Jordan. As you can see from the picture here, he was an unconventional guitarist when he started because he played almost exclusively by tapping the fretboard. He would occasionally strum, but he never played with a pick. It was always tapping on the fretboard, which meant he was playing the guitar the way you would play the piano, and so it was easy. He could have rhythm and melody going at the same time without having to rely strictly on solely on how far he could spread his fingers. He could have his left hand tapping frets way up close to the headstock, and his right hand could be, way up here on the neck. And it was amazing to watch and wonderful to listen to. This is a fantastic album. His version of Eleanor Rigby is just beautiful. His version of Round Midnight, beautiful. Fun Dance, one of the few, one of like 2 or 3 originals on here. Fantastic song. This is just a great, great album. You can't go wrong with any Stanley Jordan album, but this is the one I'd recommend, his debut. Still to this day, one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in a concert is Stanley Jordan, who had a guitar on a stand next to a piano. And at one point, he's playing the piano with his right hand, and he's tapping on the guitar with his left. And then he switched. Amazing, amazing work. Love Stanley Jordan. Okay, my number 3 conventional favorite guitarist. And again, this is, it should be no surprise. I play the guitar. I've got guitars hanging on my wall, for crying out loud. You've seen the kinds of videos I do here. Then obviously, I like Van Halen. Eruption changed the world when this thing came out, and I loved this album. But if I'm going to pick an album that shows why I love Eddie Van Halen as much as I do, listen close. That sound you're about to hear is the sound of just a buttload of Van Halen fans throwing something at their screens, because I'm using Diver Down as my example. Why am I using Diver Down as my example? Simple. I got 2 words for you. Little Guitars. Little Guitars is one of the most impressive guitar-based songs I've ever heard. The rhythm patterns are phenomenal. Oh, I love Little Guitars. As much of a virtuoso as Eddie Van Halen is as a lead guitarist, I think where he really shines is as a rhythm guitarist, as on Little Guitars. Love Diver Down. Yeah, it's got a lot of crappy covers on it, but Little Guitars. That's all it needs. And it also has secrets, which is fantastic. So, yeah. So, get off my back, man. My number 3 conventional favorite guitarist, Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen. Whew. Maybe it's time for another restorative sip. That's good beer. My number 3 among the dark horses. Okay, once again, you shouldn't be surprised that this guy is cropping up. I talk a lot about this band, and when I was mentioning earlier, I've got 3 guitar solos that are my favorites. Well, one of them is Bert Navarre's guitar solo on My Sharona. And I'm talking the album version, not the radio edit. Oh my God, is that good. But, pick a song on this album. Pick a song on any Knack album. Just listen to Bert Navarre play that guitar. Oh my God, is he a fantastic guitarist. I love the Knack. And overwhelming reason why I love the most overwhelming reason why I love the Knack is Bert Navarre's guitar playing. So number 3 among my dark horses is Bert Navarre, who is, this guy here on the edge. Love Bert Navarre. Okay, number 2 among my conventional guitarists. Well, okay, so I've been talking about these 3 favorite guitar solos. One of them is Ricky Don't Lose That Number. One of them is My Sharona. The other one, of course, is David Gilmour's masterful solo on Comfortably Numb. I'm trying not to belch into the microphone. I'm not going to hold up Comfortably Numb as my example here, though, because it's on the wall. And, spoiler alert, I fucking hate the wall. It's got like 3 songs on it that I like, and the rest of it just irritates the shit out of me. But I love David Gilmour. And I'm using his solo album here. One of the things, I was talking with a friend once, and the friend said, you can always tell when there's a breakup in a group, or there's some sort of split in a group that you like, and you're not really sure why you like it. Do you like it because of person A or person B? And he used the example of when David Gilmour went out and started releasing solo albums. He realized that he wasn't as much a fan of Pink Floyd as he thought. He was a fan of David Gilmour. I'm definitely in that camp. David Gilmour is the reason why I listen to Pink Floyd. I've heard Pink Floyd music from the Syd Barrett years, and I like David Gilmour. I like David Gilmour. And I love this album. David Gilmour, number 2 on my list of conventional favorite guitarists. Number 2 on my list of dark horses. When I first started thinking about doing this video, and thinking about, I originally started because I had all these guitarists that I wanted to talk about, but I couldn't really find a way to justify bumping somebody like Eddie Van Halen for, some of these people. And so I came up with this idea of, okay, I've got my conventionals, but I've got my dark horses. And the guitarist who was the primary reason why I had to do this, I had to talk about this guy because he is one of my very favorite guitarists. I've talked about him a little bit before, and that is a gentleman named Ian Berenson. Ian Berenson was the guitarist for the bulk of the Alan Parsons Project. Let me take that back. He was for the Alan Parsons Project. There may be a crawl down here, because it may be that on one of the albums he didn't do much, but just working from memory, yeah, he's all over this thing. And I'm using Eye in the Sky as my example here. Because there's a song on, if you want to know why I'm a big fan of Ian Berenson, there's a song on here. It's the first song on side 2. It's called You're Gonna Get Your Fingers Burned. Listen to that thing. Listen to that guitar. Oh, I love Ian Berenson. I love his guitar work throughout Alan Parsons Project albums. He is he's not shredding. He's not just doing all of these super complicated runs just for the hell of doing these super complicated runs. But oh my God, what he does just fits perfectly in every song. Huge fan of Ian Berenson. Ian Berenson is also playing. I was talking a couple of weeks ago about Al Stewart and Year of the Cat, who was doing my keyboardists, because I was talking about Peter Wood. Ian Berenson's on those albums as well. He's pretty much on anything. If Alan Parsons was producing it, it's going to have Ian Berenson attached to it in some way. So my number 2 dark horse guitarist is Ian Berenson. Okay. Now, before we get to these number 1s, I don't think this, my first top 10 is my conventional favorites, right? These are the ones that I like, that I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by. And I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this next guitarist. He usually shows up on these lists of, the 10 best guitarists, the 20 best guitarists, whatever. He usually shows up pretty far down on the list as far as I'm concerned. Man, he needs to be up there close to the top. I've got him at the top because I don't think I've ever heard anybody who is more consistently impressive than Chet Atkins. Chet Atkins can do no wrong as a guitarist. As a producer, he's got a tendency to overdo the schmaltz. But as a guitarist, oh my gosh. I briefly considered using as my example an album he released in the 80s called Stay Tuned, where he's doing duets with a bunch of different guitarists. George Benson is on that album. Larry Carlton is on that album. Steve Lukather is on that album. Who else have I got on my list here? Yeah, I think that's it as far as the ones I think Earl Klugh may be on there. Don't quote me on that. Mark Knopfler is on that. Mark Knopfler usually shows up on these kinds of lists. And it's a wonderful album. But Almost Alone, I believe next to last album that he released before he passed, is just beautiful. The title is Almost Alone because for the bulk of this, he is playing completely solo. He's got one song where he's using a looper pedal. It's called Jam Man because he was using the Digitech Jam Man, which had just been released, and he'd been playing around with it, and so he wrote a song using the Jam Man. There is I Still Want to Write Your Name, or I Still Write Your Name in the Snow is a song that he did live, and so there's a live recording of that, so he's got a band backing him on that. But the bulk of this is just him playing, and with if anything, there's going to be like a sparse orchestral backdrop or something like that, and it's just he's got one song on here called Pu'uwana Hulu, Remembering Gabby. One of the things I like about Chet Atkins is that he frequently has at least one slack key guitar song. The song that he's got on here is Remembering Gabby by Pahinui. Oh, that song makes me cry every time I hear it. It's just beautiful. And one of the things that impresses me so much when I'm listening to it is, I mentioned earlier, as a producer, Chet Atkins has a tendency to ladle the schmaltz on. There's going to be a lot more in the way of orchestral backdrop than the song needs. There's going to be, the chorus of voices doing ahs in the pre-chorus and stuff like that. And it's just, he doesn't need to put near as much of that shit into his songs as he does. Get the impression that he is the kind of guy who would work and work and work and end up overproducing his recordings. when it comes to Remembering Gabby. This is such an immediate, underproduced song that if, like me, you like listening to music turned up real high on headphones, at one point you can hear a cell phone ring in the background. Throughout this, you can hear Chet Atkins' labored breathing because he was old and getting infirm at the time that he was doing this. And it's still a glorious, glorious performance. Oh my God. So just like Diver Down deserved to be the example, and it's an album I will always treasure, if only because of Little Guitars, if only because of Remembering Gabby. Oh, I love that song. I love Chet Atkins. My number one dark horse guitarist is he regularly shows up on these lists. The reason why I've got him as my number one among my dark horses, rather than putting him over on the conventional favorites, he'd be up close to the top on the conventional favorites list, is that I think of him as a dark horse simply because I don't think enough people recognize the true brilliance of Roy Clark. If it had strings, Roy Clark could play it at a level of like total mastery. I mean, the talent that this man had in his little finger was greater than the talent that most other musicians have throughout their entire body, throughout their entire career. An amazing performer. I've got Roy Clark Live as my sample here because two things. One, it's one of the few albums of his that I actually own a copy of. And secondly, because when I think of Roy Clark, I think of him as a musician, yes, but I also think of him as an entertainer. And that comes across so much more when you hear him performing live. This is an album that we had when I was a little kid. I think we had it on 8-track, and it was one of the things we'd listen to when we took long car trips. And it's got a version of The Great Pretender that is just amazing. It's funny. It's musically very adept. He's very adroit because he's worked a medley of songs into the instrumental break of The Great Pretender. And the variety of the music that he does, and the degree of mastery that he displays as he's going from song to song to song, and then when he gets back to the Great Pretender, he repeats that last line, and as a quick aside to the audience says, "I bet you all thought I lost my place," which is just. And I know it's canned. I know it's scripted. I know that this is not him just up there riffing, but the fact that he could play as well as he could play, and sing as well as he could sing, and do the comic shtick as well as he could do the comic shtick. Oh my God. Nothing but love and respect at Papa Nick's Music for the total master that is Roy Clark. I love Roy Clark. And I haven't even gotten into this album that I own, but I own digitally. Listening to the Lightning Fingers here is just... that he can do that is just amazing. Roy Clark, my number one dark horse guitarist. My favorite dark horse guitarist. So those are my favorite guitarists, my favorite conventionals and dark horses. What are yours? Do you agree with any of these? Drop that note below. Would you like to recommend an addition to the lineup? Drop that note below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you'd click the like button. If you do click the like button, go ahead and click to subscribe if you have not already done so. It would be awfully nice of you, and it's free. You might as well. If you do subscribe, then click the bell for notifications. It makes a difference to the YouTube folks, so I would appreciate it. Thanks again for watching today. I've enjoyed having you, and I hope that the rest of your day is delightful. See you soon.